Hey guys, welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben. Today's super special occasion. I have not only one, but two film creators behind a popular Star Wars fan film called Bossk, the Scorekeeper. The original movie came out in 2020 and has over 500,000 views, if memory serves. Now, part two also came out, which Benjamin over here will confess of not seeing just yet. It is my way of basically extending the invitation for these two gentlemen and saying, what if we have podcast number two? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let me introduce us to the director, Roman Santacroce, and writer, and both of you gentlemen are producers, Matthew Sumner. Please introduce yourself, guys. Say hello. I'm so happy you're here. I'm very grateful for your time. Tell us what's the latest. What are some of the projects you're working on?
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much, Ben, for having us. I'm Roman Santacroce. I am a director, producer for Matthew and I's company, Creative Force Films. We've been established since 2020. But me as a person, I actually work in the industry full time. I'm an assistant director, and I've been on quite a bit of shows you would recognize. I've worked on Doom Patrol. That's like my primary show right now. I've done The Outsider for HBO. I've also worked on shows like Stranger Things, Walking Dead, yeah, it's been fun. Right now, I'm currently in a hiatus. I just finished Doom Patrol in late August. So Matthew and I have actually been in preparation for a new project that we will be shooting the first weekend of October, next weekend. So
Nice.
We'll talk about that in a little bit, but go ahead, Matthew.
All right, Matthew Sumner. Currently working my IT gig right now, but yeah, writer, producer, co-owner, actor, bunch of other things. But I started in film, went to film school, and then started with a lot of popular YouTube channels. And so that's how actually I met Roman, through Beatdown Boogie, which was a YouTube channel that did Mario Warfare, Modern Wargear Solid. You can see some posters up here. But
Yeah.
those are some, I guess, some cult classic, like almost like fan films.
Well, they were the first true viral fan films that were on YouTube, believe it or not. YouTube was still pretty fresh when they made these.
Right.
And I knew about Matthew before he met me, just because I've watched the films. So that's kind of what sparked our meeting. We actually met at a costume convention at Dragon Con, and I actually met him through my wife. And since we've been friends, we kind of collaborated more, and we're like, hey, we get along. Matthew fills the gaps that I have, and I fill the gaps that Matthew has, and we kind of just there you go, created this company.
Especially, guerrilla filmmaking to union filmmaking. It's like I'm on the
as a creative myself, I finished a School of Visual Arts here in New York City with a degree in traditional animation right back in 2007 when Disney said chop and cut off their animation studio. So it was a big bummer for me. So unfortunately, I never pursued the career, but I kind of swam in it. I got to interact with some of the biggest names in the industry, where people come over and give speeches, from Disney to Pixar, you name it. Guys, what would you say for each one of you is the most rewarding thing about your career?
Well, I'll start and say that probably the most rewarding thing for me with my career is it's something different every day. It's the whole reason that I joined it. And unfortunately, I picked a very hard position of assistant directing. That it's a lot of pressure, a lot of thankless jobs involved in assistant directing. But what I really enjoyed most about that job was it helped me kind of understand the intricacies of every single position on a film set, because I'm in charge of kind of facilitating information to them, helping them get their day done. We are a support team. And I use that knowledge kind of as a tome to keep in my brain for when I start directing, which I started in 2020. I mean, as everyone does, I've been shooting things leading up, but I would say that Scorekeeper is kind of like my first true challenge to myself as a director, of like, from the ground up, let's go, let's make this as professional as we can. And I'm very happy with the result. I mean, I will say that Scorekeeper and the sequel film, Notice Integrations, both projects quite literally were better than I ever anticipated in terms of the final product. So what I enjoy most about my career, again, is something different every day, and kind of the excitement when something comes out better than you expect, or worse, regardless. Regardless of the outcome, you still have that excitement because it's like, hey, we helped make this thing happen. That's how I feel.
And yourself, Matt?
I mean, likewise, it's different every day. I mean, even with this tech job that I have, it's different. It's not the same thing.
Right.
But as for coming from the writing aspect, it's amazing to see what you put on paper, and then everyone else gets to see the stuff that's in your head, right? Visually. And then Roman comes in and says, no, we can't do this. Kind of tones me down, you know. But
or I turn it up. I'm like, hey, let's try this, and we do it. So and then also on the acting side, you know, it's different every day because I get to be different every day. And it's kind of cool to take yourself out of a project. Like, I don't see myself in the characters I play. I see the characters, and that's something cool. Like, it's a weird feeling because I don't even see myself as Rail. I just watch it and see Rail. Like, that's the true character there. It's sounds crazy, but it's kind of cool to be able to do that. Because I on the first, you know, things I've ever acted in, it was like, oh, you know, it was judging yourself. And so when you can get to that point to take yourself out of it, it's like, I don't even, that's what it is. It's another person on screen, and that's the beauty of the acting aspect of it. So if that made any sense. So
it did. That's our first cut.
That's fine.
I do apologize. I was trying to prolong it as much as possible. Please talk. It's all awesome. Like, all right, here we go. It's ridiculous. It's like this every day here.
Well, I can piggyback off of that.
Yeah.
If you want to, I can keep talking.
No, that's fine. We can.
Okay.
Let me just
wait for that to die down.
Yeah, because like, I
Where
can't not participate. I'm in northern Manhattan, around like 181st Street.
Oh,
it's called Washington Heights.
Yeah. My grandparents were off Sutton Place.
Oh, nice.
And I used to visit there all the time. I'm from Philly originally. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's a very lovely neighborhood. Like, we have a nice park here, Fort Tryon Park. I used to take out a lot of models out there for photography. You know, there's a lot of things you could do here in terms of shooting wise. Just recently, about a month ago, we had like a whole load of trucks come over. I think they were shooting CSI. It's like, it's common here in the Manhattan area to shoot around here.
Yeah, they're right out your window, aren't they?
Oh man, I do apologize.
No, you're fine.
All right, I think we're ready. Part 2, Ben. Part 2. We're still rolling. So Roman and Matt, I kind of wanted to also have questions that kind of like pertain to you individually, and then I guess we'll keep on moving. For you, you know, I wanted to ask, what do you feel is the difference between directing a commercial film, let's say, or a television episode versus a small-time project, which is a passion project, I assume?
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying financially, it's very different. I mean, our company kind of headed the funding for both of these projects because it's a fan film. You can't, you know, according to the rules, you were not allowed to crowdfund. And we followed the rules because I went union with both of these projects. Both these projects are SAG contracted, like they're contracted through SAG and they're contracted through the DGA. So these are both recognized as real builders for me. And for the SAG after actors, I mainly just wanted to kind of get a higher caliber group of people that I work with regularly. And, you know, they offered, you know, deep discounts, obviously, because I know them well. But it was great because I already had actors that kind of knew their way around a page, and it helped me kind of work as a director with them more. But in terms of differences besides money, I would definitely say there's way more creative freedom. Television, you always have to go up. Always. Let's ask this. I mean, I've been on shows where, you know, we've had a director go, I want to do this different color. And then we have to stop, and then we have to go, and we have to get the costume designer, and then we have to get from the costume designer. We then have to go to the showrunner, and then we have to go from the showrunner. Maybe then he or she will have to talk to the writers, and then they all have to get on the same page. Which, I've been on shows where we've shut down for an hour and a half to figure out if someone's wearing a yellow shirt or a red shirt. So, but then there's times when we're here, like for example, on Scorekeeper, if you've seen the film, we've had several times where, I'm looking at my watch, and because I will always have assistant directing inside me, and we're timekeepers. So, when I'm directing, I'm actually looking at my watch and I'm like, okay, we have 2 hours left in our day. I'm going to drop this shot. And then, my DP looks at me and he's like, why, Roman? We don't have to do that. I'm like, no, we do, because I want to make sure we hit our day. And I truly don't need that shot. It was just something to have in editing. And since I was also primarily editing, in terms of Justin Wright was our main editor. He kind of like built it all. And then, as a director, you come in and you help. But, having editing in mind, I'm one of those people that directs to edit. So I'm thinking about editing as I'm shooting. I was like, cool, let's drop that shot and keep going. Which, in other shows, you'd have to be, well, let's go check with that. Or, as simple as like, if Rail's wearing a hat or not.
Yeah. Trust me, even though like I didn't get to work in the industry professionally, as much, I do recognize that tune where you basically have to please many eyes and like, hey, stop, because, you're not only responsible for your part of the gig, right? There's, higher ups out there who decide what goes where, and sometimes you have to answer, to every whim. But Matt, also from your angle as a writer, how do you approach a small-time passion project versus something that you're hired for and you have to write professionally for? Like I would assume that the format is different, or maybe the way that you set your schedule, or the time that you decide to write what and when, and what's the scale of your script and so forth.
I got on a writing kick for these, and part 3 was written, so it was like it was fun. That's the thing. It was
It's getting shaped, though, I will say. We're shaping it because of things that happened in your T-shirt.
I'm excited. I'm excited, guys.
So, that's the thing when you're hired to do something. I think it's more pressure of work, maybe. It's less freedom, I guess. And then, like for Scorekeeper, it was fun. We were, a big homage to the Predator, right? Or Predator. So, and like Roman and I, like we love these franchises, so it was just fun. And
also to piggyback off of what he's saying with the writing aspect, honestly, the hardest part of this entire film was truly mashing Star Wars with Predator. Like, I know we got a lot of gripe from people like, you're ripping it off. I get that, but I think
that's
we did
sort of the idea. That's what I got from it. It's like paying the tribute to the great film.
That was our biggest challenge. Like, and Matthew did it. I think he executed it beautifully. Like, if you go back and watch the scene when Rail is talking to all of his rebels, and then go back and watch the scene when Arnold is talking to his commandos after they raid the bunker, you will actually hear almost identical lines, but Matthew just spun it a little bit to be in Star Wars, and it flows. I just think it was very well done, and it was.
Matt, I can tell you, I had the smile throughout the whole film as a kid. Even though I grew up in Russia, my first 14 years of my life, we all grew up with Hollywood cinema. Indiana Jones, Predator, Terminator, RoboCop. We all grew up with this stuff. That's what unites us, right? The art of it. And when I'm looking at your script, it's very easy to parse and figure out when somebody's faking it and they're trying to disguise their work. Oh, no, it's original. And you say, no, this is taken from here, 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 and here. But then it's a completely different spin when you see an obvious nod to something that came before. It's almost like when you take a heavy metal album and at the end of it, there will be one tribute song where the newer artist is basically saying, like, doing a Black Sabbath songs. Hey, we were inspired by these people. They're the great musicians. Let us kind of like say thank you to them in the form of performing their song. That's what I found here. It's a completely wholesome, organic piece that feels unique. It stands on its own 3 feet. It has its own heroes and cast. We'll talk about this, but also those little quotes and nods. I'm like, dude, this is what spells to me good writing, when it's like so layered and it's kind of, you position it there, and people who know will know. They'll recognize it.
Thank you. But I will say that the cake was already made, right? I just put some icing.
We just garnished it. Yeah.
I just did the icing. So yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't. Yeah,
Moving forward a little bit into now the Star Wars, and our love for cinema, before we jump on our big topic, I just wanted to kind of point out that, us, the nerd culture, before, if we were considered like, you nerds, you geeks, you stupid, and playing video games or comics or D&D or whatnot, it's just you were discarded. You were like a social outcast. And now we're suddenly the cool kids because we enjoy all this stuff. It's trendy, and D&D is more popular than ever before. Just a quick question there, like if you guys could name one or two some of your favorite filmmakers or movies that they made that just influenced you.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, favorite film, nonstop, like
Perfection.
nonstop, like you go from having to get the Ark or the medallion to Nazis are there to truck, you know what I mean? Like it's nonstop, and then submarine, it's like what? And then they get to the island, so and then we all know that, but yeah, just Indiana Jones is my all-time favorite.
Yeah.
And Star Wars got me into wanting to be creative on that side. So Lucas really helped inspire my imagination like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's
How about you, Roman?
I will say as a child, it was James Cameron. His projects really they hooked me.
Yeah.
To get me really enjoying film from an action perspective with, Terminator 2 and Aliens and all. He's the sequel king. He makes them better.
Right. Thank you. That's a very, very good way of putting it. Yeah.
And then as I got older and, got more into filmmaking, Steven Spielberg was a massive influence for me. And believe it or not, my second favorite, which people are going to be like, what, is Alfred Hitchcock, because they're on two very separate spectrums. Alfred Hitchcock is very much about the very fine details, where Spielberg is all about world building. He creates an entire world for you to just take your imagination into, which I love. And Spielberg did it with like mundane things. For example, like E.T. You just you have a family with with a couple kids, and one thing I've researched a lot of Spielberg and watched a lot of the documentaries that have come out about him, but he loves to have children in his films because you can connect with a child the most, because at the end of the day, we are all children deep down, is like his viewpoint, which I really respect, and I think it's great.
100%.
And then the last director that I've actually been really interested in visually, because he comes from architecture, is Joseph Kosinski. He's done Tron Legacy, Oblivion. He just did Top Gun Maverick. So what I like about him is he's very precise with where he wants you to look.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how I am as well with directing. But I love to kind of take pieces from everyone.
Yeah. Alfred Hitchcock was described by many of my professors at School of Visual Arts, because, we had the department shared with film department and animation. It's kind of back and forth. We all learned storyboarding and script writing and so forth. I had this professor, Howard Beckerman. He was connected to one of the big great eight at Disney. He animated the original Popeye. Very, very old gentleman. Wow. He looks like Lincoln. We all called him Lincoln, the beard, everything. And he basically talked about Hitchcock as a painter. Because when you look at his shots, the way he positions everything within the shot, he's like a painter. His story is mostly visual. Text is sort of kind of important, but it's always secondary to him.
Yeah.
But also, aside from, once again, professional cinema, there's this whole culture of fan films. I used to manage a video game / comic book store here in New York City in the Bronx area called Bulletproof Comics. And I got to interact with a lot of, different fandoms there. There were actually a few prominent DC and Marvel authors that live in that area. It's kind of like arts and neighborhood in the Bronx there. And once upon a time, somebody brought a CD. This is before YouTube, right? We're talking about mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And that's how we would share fan films. And some of the earliest stuff that I've seen was Batman Dead End by Sandy Carolla. that came out in 2003. And then another one, which was on the same CD, was Punisher: The First Round by Corey Sosner. That one came out in 2005. And those blew my mind. I just couldn't believe it. Hold on a second. People can do this stuff? Oh my God, I need to research, I need to see what's out there in that, fandom verse and what fans are doing. So the last question I kind of want to do before we move on into Star Wars, any personal fan films that you guys saw for the first time that also just blew your mind?
Well, I'll certainly start. Believe it or not, it was Beat Down Boogie. So a fun fact, Matthew and I actually connected over Solid Snake, the video game character, because I grew up on Metal Gear Solid, and we were actually creating these videos. This is like right around when YouTube came out. This was like late high school for us. And we were creating these Super Smash VR fight scenes where it's Solid Snake going into VR to fight all these different characters. We had Duke Nukem, we had like Scorpion and Sub-Zero, we had like a whole bunch of different characters. Well, right around the time we were shooting these, Modern War Gear Solid came out, and it exploded on YouTube. And I went and looked at that, and I was like, this is exactly what we were trying to do. This is insane. Like how this is incredible. They're blowing it out of the water, but we were trying to do with our high school cameras. But when I saw that, I was like, that inspires me to just try and make projects that we want to do. It like, don't let the universe distract you. So, and that's actually the beginnings there. The other one that I really enjoyed was Batman Dead End, believe it or not. I saw that as well, and that one really hooked me for sure. So
the whole story, how they had to basically, I think they went to actual studios to borrow some of the, xenomorph suits. I couldn't freaking believe it. I'm like, this is impossible.
It was beautiful. Like I thought it was professional. Like I quite literally thought a studio hired them. It was beautifully done. The lighting, the contrast, it was great. The Joker looked great. So
the cape had so much character when like Batman rises. That you remember that shot? Oh my God!
I mean, it's right out of the animated series where he creates the silhouette, like just like that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was unreal.
So, also, I'd add Maul, the Apprentice. Remember that one?
Oh yeah. Maul,
oh my God,
that was a big one.
And if you know me, it's like you know.
And the director was connected with, I believe, Power Rangers in some shape or form, because it had that over-the-top cheesy dialogues, deliberately so, right? But then when it got to the action, I'm like, holy crap, this guy's a real martial artist. Like the way he handled that dual lightsaber blade and the kicks and everything was so crisp, so on point, and the action was so clear to register. He didn't do those super fast cuts. It was just so well done.
It really was, yeah.
Maul cosplay, I think, is the actor, and then Andy Long worked on that too.
Really?
He was is a Jackie Chan stuntman as well. So
right.
That's awesome. I'm not sure the timeline on it, but yeah. But going back to Modern Warfare Solid, this is the poster for.
This is so dope. Can you put it a little bit up front? I want to. Oh man, this is nice.
Feel that light, maybe, I don't know.
There
we go. There we go. There we go. Nice.
It basically was a film that would never be made. We got together, all my friends, and it was just a buddy cop series with Snake from Metal Gear and Ghost from Modern Warfare Solid, and we were just going to film a trailer, like a spoof trailer, and then we basically improv so much good stuff it became 2 episodes on YouTube, and then everybody was screaming for more, so we basically shot 3, 4, and 5, and then after that we shot episodes 1 and 2 of Mario Warfare, which is Mario Brothers. But
I'm scratching my head trying to figure out, did I see those? I must have seen some of those, because I was always, when the YouTube really started rolling out, I really was invested in it. I was like, let me see what people are dropping on this little new platform. What's going on there? The fan projects. I guess we moved from that Neutral Grounds. That was the first one. People experimented with Flash there. And then when they went into full video, I was always kind of on the lookout for those.
Yeah, Newgrounds was definitely a big beginning.
I got to drop some love to Infectious Designer for their Killzone.
That was great.
That was great. Yeah, Mario Warfare was another.
That's awesome. This is so dope. I love it.
It was basically Mario Brothers, but tactical, real world tactical stuff.
Yeah.
And that one blew up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was huge. Yeah.
That one, yeah, that put Beat Down Boogie on the map, so to speak.
Oh, yeah. All right, guys. Let me not torture my viewers anymore. I hope tons of people get to see it. I'll try to push this as much as possible. But moving on to Star Wars now. General question, and I'll kind of like shoot it to each one of you guys. I wanted to hear a little bit about your first memory, your first experience watching Star Wars films. And then to each one of you, Roman, if you could pick out of the 9 films that we have, specifically out of the feature films, which do you think is the best directed film? And Matt, for you, which out of the 9 films do you think is the best written film?
That's good. Well, I will start with my childhood. I was fortunate enough to get a marathon when I was like 5, and it was my dad and my brother were showing me the films, and I immediately fell in love with the Empire. I thought they looked really cool. I love the Stormtroopers, and then Empire Strikes Back came on, and they got to the bounty hunter scene. And this is one of my favorite memories because I'm watching it and I got super excited when I saw Boba Fett, and I pointed at him. I'm like, I like that guy. He's my favorite. And my brother was 10 years older than me. He's like, no, you can't pick him. And I went, why? He's like, that's my favorite. You can't pick him too. So I begrudgingly went with my second favorite because my favorite color is yellow,
right,
with Bossk. And I was like, fine, then Bossk is my favorite. My brother's like, you don't even know anything about him. And I'm like, well, I want to learn more about him. So my brother gave me the book, Tales of the Bounty Hunters. And he's like, he waited till I was older. He didn't want me to read it yet. But, you know, when I got older, he's like, here, read this book. And that's when I really started loving Bossk. Like, I just liked his concept. Yeah, that was my introduction to Star Wars. You know, I might get some flack, but hands down, Empire Strikes Back will always be my favorite film, period. Directing style, thought it was very well done for the time that it was shot. It holds up today beautifully. But what I really like most about it is they shoot it in a very static way, in a way where there's always, like you were saying, they're painting pictures with their shots. Yeah. If you notice, the camera doesn't move a whole lot in that film. Our sequel film, actually, No Disintegrations, took heavy inspiration from Empire Strikes Back, which, and I'm proud to say it's a original idea. So we are not mashing up or paying homage. We're paying homage slightly to a very particular moment in Empire Strikes Back, hence No Disintegrations. But yeah, Empire Strikes Back will always hold its #1 spot for me in my heart. Followed closely by Rogue One. I really like Rogue One. Yeah. Both.
Let's hear from Matt.
But yeah, I was gonna say, Roman, no Ewok love. Come on.
I did like the Ewoks when I was little. That's for sure.
Yeah. Lucas knew what he was doing, right?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I have to agree with Empire Strikes Back as writing too. Lawrence Kasdan doing the screenplay on that one, and also did the screenplay for Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you know, I have to. I can't not say that. It is my fave. My Star Wars origin story is a little less exciting than having a brother
taking my character from me.
I grew up with 2 sisters, so I honestly, and my mom, but I honestly didn't see Star Wars until it aired on TV, and it was Return of the Jedi. And then I was like, what is this? Right. And then as soon as I saw Boba, come on, like, and I say this is my reasons why I kind of fell in love with that character, is because Westerns were big. Clint Eastwood was, the Western hero at the time, and he's based off Clint Eastwood, Man with No Name.
Right.
I love medieval armor warfare, studied medieval history. He's wearing a Crusader helmet with a T-visor. He's got a jetpack. We all love jetpacks, right? And he's a bounty hunter. So it's, that's, I just latched onto him right there. And green's like, my favorite color. So why not?
Yeah.
Where Romans is yellow. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah, what's a funny bit, which I didn't know before, I was under the impression, growing up in a small Russian town, that before Soviet Union, fell apart, that we just simply didn't have access to Western cinema and they were illegal for some reason. They weren't. During like 80s when I was growing up, Soviet Union was already lax. A lot of Western cinema actually came over and was featured on the big screen. And same was true for actually 1977 Star Wars. It's just that Soviet party said, like, just don't show it too much, show a limited release. We don't want Russian kids, being influenced by this Western stuff too much. It was just a bunch of nonsense. But anyway, so I went down, and when Google became prominent, I took a look at some of the marketing material for the original film. Believe it or not, when you look at them, they are actually marketed as Westerners. They have like a paper mache cutout of Han Solo wearing a cowboy hat with a gun. And it says like space Western. I was like, I couldn't believe it. A completely different approach in marketing, because Soviet Union produced some of the greatest science fiction literature, especially in the 30s and 40s. Biggest science fiction names. Obviously Isaac Asimov, Russian immigrant, came over to the US, but also they were big on this. So when Star Wars was introduced, they were kind of trying to appeal more to its sci-fi / Western roots rather than the fantasy roots. So I was like, okay, this is quite interesting.
Yeah.
But guys, moving to your project now, this is the big thing that we wanted to talk about. You, Roman, started telling us a little bit about your passion, your interest in Bossk specifically, but I just wanted to hear a few words on how this project was first conceived, and from the practical standpoint, not just your personal interest in Bossk, but from practical standpoint of how this is going to be delivered actually and produced. Why Bossk? Why this specific character?
I'll start, and then I'll have Matt take over as to how we inceptioned the concept. No, you tell it better, but I'll start by saying Bossk was originated from, believe it or not, Matthew and I were having a conversation, and Matthew told me that he was trying to build a Boba Fett for many years.
Right.
And I said, well, if you ever, for some incentive, if you ever get Boba Fett done, I'll make Bossk. And Matthew was like, okay, well, why not? So fast forward a couple months later, it's almost like the universe heard me say that, because I'm on The Outsider, the TV show, and I'm in the trailer. We're working on the creature, and I'm standing next to the makeup effects team, and the lead makeup effects artist, his name's Bill Johnson. Amazing man. He executive produced Scorekeeper and Notice Integrations. Like he's a phenomenal makeup artist. He's done like really big shows. And believe it or not, the guy one of the people that helped me make Bossk, his name's Eric Garcia. He just won an Emmy for Stranger Things. Nice. He helped build Vecna.
Phenomenal effect. Absolutely phenomenal.
It was incredible. And I'm proud to say now that Bossk is made by an Emmy Award winner. Anyways, we were sitting in the trailer and we had a conversation, and we started connecting on sideshow collectibles. I actually there's Vader there in the case. But I have a couple sideshow guys in the case here, and Bill is an avid collector. And when I mean avid, I think he has almost the entire warehouse of sideshow in his home. Like he's one of those amazing collectors. And we bonded over that, and we started talking. We started connecting on Star Wars a little bit, and Bill kept telling me like, yeah, Star Wars is cool, but I wasn't a fan of the creatures. I feel like you can always do better, and that's what Bill specializes in. And I then said, well, I'm trying to make a Bossk costume. And he's like, really? I said, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, we should stay in touch. I'd like to help with that. And I was like, okay, cool. Fast forward, pandemic hits, and Bill calls me and says, let's make Bossk. Come over to my shop, and I'm going to teach you how to make it. And he quite literally taught me to make this mask. I blocked this entire head out. We life casted my head. I then took a sculpt of my head, and then I molded on it, blocked on it, and then Bill handed it all over to Eric Garcia, who finished the main design. And the heavy inspiration for Bossk for this costume was Battlefront. However, I was really inspired by Jurassic Park. I love Jurassic Park. I love the Velociraptors, and you can tell by the way he's
Right.
scaled and his coloring, especially. Bill painted him. I painted the eyes, but Bill, took that inspiration. And then the most amazing part of this whole costume is the lower jaw is foam latex, so the mouth actually moves. So when I have my mouth in there and I open my mouth, it opens with it.
Nice.
So Bill helped create it. And then while we were making it, though, I was visiting Matthew and we were sitting down playing Battlefront 2 on his couch.
Yeah.
And
my bet.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have to verify. It's the PlayStation 2 Battlefront or the newer Battlefronts?
Xbox.
It's the newest one.
Battlefront
The
2.
newest one. Yeah.
And so I had finished my boba, and that's I got it on my screensaver here. So it's basically the one
Nice.
you see in the film.
Yeah.
And we were playing. Of course, I was Boba and he was Bossk, and we were running around taking loud or getting took out, right? And then Roman activated the heat vision, and I said, "Holy crap, man!" He's like, "What?" I was like, "Bossk is the predator."
And then we both froze.
Looked at each other. Yeah.
It makes so much sense.
We were like, all you need is your costume. We need rebels, and we just need woods.
Oh man.
We have a fan film, and that was the first.
We were like, he's a headhunter. He hunts Wookiees. He collects scalps instead of skulls. He jumps immensely. He quite literally is a hunter, just like a predator. He hunts from up high because in the game you jump really high. So we were like just putting all these pieces together, and we're like, this is incredible.
I was like,
and then Matthew just took it, ran with it.
It makes so much sense now because Matt, you're leading me right next to my question, literally. Like I'm reading from my script, like, oh my God, this is unreal. Because what I wanted to ask you, once you sat down and started ideating and saying, okay, now I want to make this a fan film. Mm-hmm. Did you know that you want to lean into Predator heavily and say, I want to take inspiration there, but tread that line safely and show the fans that we have our own story here, but we'll show them where the inspiration comes from.
Like as soon as I started writing, I was like, well, YouTube, you have to start with action. So I knew exactly where they were going. They were going in to rescue hostages, and that's exactly what they're doing in
and Predator. Yeah.
And then they're going in to rescue a Wookiee who has a beacon, locator beacon, know where they are. And you can even hear Dylan's character targets at
the center of the upper level. Yeah. That's like it's like an Easter egg. It's one of our favorite lines. It's like the first line of the whole film of Scorekeeper.
Yeah.
So we knew where they were, like going in,
and I love that because I also love Rogue One, and I really wanted to shoot that opening fight just like Rogue One.
Yeah.
A lot of handheld, a lot of like frenetic energy. Really feel like you're in the fight with them, and it helped. And then Battlefront came right back into play because we're like, well, we need a Blaine character, and we were like, we have a heavy from Battlefront, and believe it or not, Bill Johnson, the same guy who helped me with Bossk, he collects like props, and he just bought an airsoft minigun just for the hell of it. And we were like, can we make this look like sci-fi? And he's like, yeah, of course, I'll 3D print it. He has a giant 3D printer. So he created this minigun, and we were looking for a Blaine, and believe it or not, Tom Williams, the guy who plays him, plays Battlefront. He's the stunt coordinator on Doom Patrol and also a director for Second Units. So he's done like a lot. He's very well known in the film industry. And I pitched the idea, and I'm like, do you know anyone that would want to do this? And he's like, yeah, I can ask around. And then we were out at lunch, and I turned to look at Matthew, and I'm like, wait, do you want to do it? And he immediately was like, yes, I'm there.
And he definitely projects that charisma. I instantly loved it. I got to say, I enjoyed all of the acting in the short films, which is not a small feat. Once again, whether you're trying to feed everybody or everybody joins in because they want to help out, they know it's a fan film. It's not an easy task, but here, everything works really well. So just a few days ago, I got a real honor to get to interview Steve Perry, one of the
Yeah,
bigger American science fiction and fantasy authors. I was
that's
literally
amazing.
in awe, man. And and we're speaking with him, and he sort of kind of he's leading my thoughts and ideas towards where I believe Star Wars basically begins. When we look at the original film, the story practically begins at the end with a bang.
Yeah,
They throw you in the action sequence, Tantive 4, and figure it out. Learn to swim. And that's what you guys did with your film. And that's what I think really pulled me in and centered me. And I was paying attention and trying to, get invested with these characters. All right, I can't skip this now. I got to see where this ends. Because we all have like 15-second attention span now, even with YouTube. People don't invest their time unless they're really interested. Your film really pulled us in. And I want to start with this big action sequence. When this starts, I want you guys to walk me through it. From the start, we see Bossk's ship, Houndstooth, orbit this planet. I'm already sold on the visual effects. I'm like, all right, this is professionally done stuff. I'm in. These guys are not going to waste my time. Something special is happening here. And we open up with this massive action sequences, which, again, guys, I'm not kissing up to you. I want to honestly say it's one of the best action sequences I've seen in any fan film, in or outside of Star Wars. It is immaculately done. I was like, can Disney Plus take notes here, please? This is serious stuff. Everything works in concert. It's well thought out action. There's very convincing military jargon going on. Beautiful action set. Guys, if either one of you, if you could just quickly, walk us through this scene, how did you plan for it? And specifically, how did you set up that almost like professional prop stage that you would have in cinema? It almost felt to me like a paintball field. Please, just let me know.
Well, Matthew, how about you take it off in the creative, and then I'll share the production.
I was going to say, originally it was just we were going to have to build an outpost, right? We were
in the woods.
And it was like, okay, it's going to look like, Predator's wooded hut with hostages, no helicopter, like we ain't got budget for that. Again, Bill Johnson, go ahead, Roman, like take it away.
Yeah, so Bill comes out of left field because he was like, so where are you shooting this? And I'm like, well, we're obviously going to shoot in the woods. And Bill goes, well, everything shoots in the woods for Star Wars. And I'm like, I know, but it's kind of like the only thing we can afford. And he goes, hang on. I know the owner of Netherworld Haunted House, which is the largest haunted house here in Atlanta, Georgia. And he goes, let me call him. So he calls him. He invites us over. And when we get there, the theme of the year is sci-fi. So the entire outer complex is designed in that sci-fi look, except for the barricades. The barricades, fortunately, I used to manage an airsoft field in Atlanta. I'm a big airsoft player. So the manager that I gave control of was actually our stormtrooper. He's a stuntman. Right. So I went to him. I'm like, hey, can we borrow these barricades for the shoot? He's like, of course. So we got a U-Haul, loaded them up, drove them over. And we built this entire set. It was really fun. We painted the barricades, we did the striping, and then all the like blaster burn marks on the barricades themselves, that's all just painted. Because we wanted it to look like this firefight has been happening for a few minutes. And honestly, my favorite part of that whole experience was we were shooting there for 2 days. And when I asked the owner of Netherworld if we could shoot there, he went, I'm not sure. I've had really bad experiences with crews in the past, and I don't know if I can do this. And Bill stepped up and he goes, I vouch for Roman. Him and his crew are going to make it happen. And if anything happens, it's on me. And I looked at Bill, I was like, you sure about this? And he's like, yeah, I trust you. So we shot 2 days there, no problem whatsoever. Believe it or not, Ben, when we were done, that's the owner's name, he was like, I'm so thankful and impressed with how you guys handled the set. Because we had a crew of like 55 people. He was like, you guys did great. You actually cleaned up after yourselves, because I left it right back how we started. My entire crew, Matthew and I's entire crew that we got together, we're very thankful for them. The whole concept of our company, Creative Force Films, is to build a creative force of everyone. Right. So everyone lived up to that. We did a great job. And Ben was left smiling. He actually had a few other shows come and shoot there since then. So
And Roman, I gotta say that every ounce of effort that you guys put into that set, again, it looked like a professional film set. As somebody who he's versed in filmmaking, how it's done, I could recognize where the detail went into, because he wanted to convey that very lived-in feel that George Lucas helped to create cinematically. And it's there in the sets. For some reason, the way that you set up your barricades, I imagined, even though I never went paintball shooting myself, I sort of kind of figured that was sort of what's happening there. But my next question is, how much of training, like weapon training, did your principal and secondary actors had? And Matthew, for you specifically, did you have to study actual military jargon? Because when I'm listening to it, like, I don't play FPS games myself, but my younger brother plays a lot. And when I pick up on it, you could easily deduce where it's really phony or where it's really like, all right, it's probably written by like Tom Clancy sort of writer who knows his military experience. How did that come about? So the training for these actors, but also the jargon, the language that they speak.
Coming from the jargon, I have some military friends that I'll say, does this sound right? And then they'll give me the jargon, or they'll be like, yeah, man, that sounds great. And then also we're in a Star Wars universe, so
we can change it a little.
Yeah, we can change it, switch it around a little bit. Like, I'm not going to yell, "Get to the chopper." You know, Mel says, "Get to the ship." Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not as impactful. We wanted to say
we were going to yell, "Get to the U-wing," but
yeah.
But in terms of the actual military training, part of the casting process, I needed people that had some experience holding a firearm. Like, that was the number one stipulation after, you know, can you fit the role? And then the second question was, can you manipulate firearm? I will say everyone did a really good job. Believe it or not, the one person that was least experienced with firearms was Freddie Boyd. He played Xander, which is the guy, the radio man.
I enjoyed him a lot. He was really cool.
Everyone was phenomenal. And actually one of my favorite accidents was Alexis Louder, who plays Lule, the Zabrak with the horns. I'm not kidding. She was brought onto the project 3 days before we started shooting, because my original became unavailable because she had a job she had to take. And she's like, I'm going to offer Alexis. And I'm so grateful that not only Alexis took the job and worked with us, because her career has exploded. She is in this new movie called Cop Shop, opposite Gerard Butler. She's a supporting actress right next to him.
Nice.
And she's been in a lot of stuff. She's been in Tomorrow War. But what I loved most about her is she had military experience in terms of like knowing how to manipulate a firearm. So she came in ready to go. Like, her first question to me when I hired her was, how do you want Lule to sound? And I'm like, okay, well, do you know Asajj Ventress, or like, do you know any of these characters from Clone Wars? And she's like, yeah, you want someone who like hisses when they speak. And I'm like, exactly that. She's like, okay, cool, let me work on it. And I was like, great, we'll talk day one. Day one, she came in, she fired off one line. I'm like, you're good. All right, next, let's see who we got. So I'm so thankful for the entire cast, because everyone really did their homework before they came. And I will say the biggest thing with military, because I have a background in that world, so I would take them off camera while we were setting up the shot. Freddie in particular, I'd quite literally be walking him through the scene, like, this is how you check your corner. You would then go here, you pie it, so make sure you're like going up and down as you go. And he was, you know, everyone was very attentive and aware in it. I think it sold really well. It was great. So
yeah, one of my good friends, actually, he is a weapons trainer. He took me actually to his field once, and like he showed me how to shoot like a shotgun, a pistol. So I immediately recognized when your actors were doing this, sort of like the first season of The Mandalorian as well. It's like, finally, stormtroopers know how to handle weapons.
Oh, you mean take it down?
Right. Maneuver the weaponry. But Matt, if I can compliment you, of all the people, because until we started rolling this, guys, I didn't recognize that Matthew plays our major. I'm like, all right, everybody's cool. But this dude right here, he's the military center. He's the heart and soul of this piece, because you have the physique, you have the height, but also you just have that commanding voice, like your acting experience. You're telling people what to do, and it sells right away. Like, I would listen to him probably in a combat situation as well, because he knows what he's doing and he's projecting confidence. But I wanted to ask, like, did you actually give your principles like any Star Wars material that they may not know, like, hey, these are stormtroopers, this is the way it's supposed to do, they fight the Empire, and these are like the bounty hunters, stuff like that?
I had to do that with Alexis a little bit because
Yeah.
she didn't really know Star Wars very well. In terms of like some of those lines that I had her say, like when they talk about Saw Gerrera and the one line, she's like, the Shadowlands of Kashyyyk, and then like she did that line in the rehearsal, and she looked at me, she's like, what the hell's that? And I'm like, all right, let me walk you through this. So this happened at this time, and this is, you're throwing it back. Almost everyone died, yada yada. And then what I loved about her is it just clicks, and she's like, all right, cool, I'll convey that. But for the most part, no. We strictly hired geeks and nerds, so they knew the material going in. My favorite was Tom Williams because he just knew the universe so well. I quite literally gave him no notes. Like I was just like, "That's you, Tom. You just take the character." And like he brought his own chewing tobacco. Like he wanted to do that himself. And what I loved about it is he had it was beef jerky.
It was beef jerky,
but it was caffeinated beef jerky because he was tired. But he would mix it with red Gatorade. So when he spit it, it was a different color. And he's like, that was all him. He just did it himself. And I was like, that's you, dude. You got it.
Man, as a Predator fan, I was sold. I'm like, oh, dude, he's I ain't got time to bleed. Like, oh my God, man, this is crazy. This is good. Matt, I'm also curious, did you consider your dialogue lines specifically for the actors that you guys hired? And also, how do you balance between writing a story that has both grit, but also comedic moments, but you also write it so organically that you never lose audience? How sometimes lose their identity. They don't know what they want to be, whether comedy or action. Yours is mostly an action-centered piece, but the comedy works so well.
I don't want to say I hear voices in my head. No. I did not go over characters with our actors, right? We knew what we wanted. Like Hawkins is Xander, right? So we know we wanted a thinner, younger person to be our radio man, our point man. He's faster than Rail and the others. Rail's got bad knees or something. I don't know.
Right.
But for dialogue, it's just like that's his job, right? So Xander knows he's on the radio. He knows positioning. He knows maps. He's like a navigator. So he knows what he's talking about when he's like, "Hey, there's a path to the north. We shouldn't be able to. They shouldn't be able to find us there for a little bit."
There's trust. Like the mage already knows that he's finding the right solution.
So all the characters had their backgrounds developed, and like B. Lee's a tracker because I'm just mirroring the Billy, which is this funny story there. Billy from Predator is also B. Lee. Who is played by Brian Lee.
That was a happy accident.
That's amazing.
I did that on purpose because Brian played Toad in Mario Warfare. So I've worked with Brian for years. Like I know Brian. So I did that kind of on purpose. But so all the characters' backgrounds match their dialogue. Right. And,
I will say the hardest character to actually blend into that universe though was Afra.
Afra, yeah.
Because Afra is a canon character. She's already established. She has a very specific way of being written, and that was quite literally the biggest challenge. And I props to Courtney for doing her absolute best to blend both worlds, because you have Predator, this like super macho yada yada kind of concept, and then you have this Afra character who's very slinky and
sly, right? Yeah,
sly, and
he's not a good person.
But it's also very different from the Anna character though in Predator though, because Anna in Predator, she's kind of just like a fearful hostage who you see her arc where she actually gets courageous at the end and she's like ready to fight,
right?
But at the end, she's essentially a what do you call it? A device to help carry the commandos to their mission.
Right.
Where Afra, we had to utilize more as a true plot moment. She was a plot carrier. So I think Matthew did a very good job. He did the absolute best that he could to kind of channel her character into this universe that's already kind of been established. So
kind of came up in my head. I had to wrap around why they were there. Like I don't really tell the audience, right? So they got there. It was the Empire took over the base, and then Afra Bossk show up, and then there's a Wookiee there, right? So Bossk is going to go nuts. The Wookiee takes off, leaves his beacon, and then the attack happens. So when the firefight starts, Bossk is chasing that Wookiee,
Right.
For a trophy, and Afra's caught in this firefight without Bossk, and it's like, oh, yeah, okay. So she grabs the beacon or the locator device, and then that's when they find her. They
and
flash
tries to blend in. Classic Afro fashion. So
yeah, she got a quick think to. He's like, okay, there's rebels. Rebels are worth money. Okay. So,
I enjoyed Courtney Chan's performance. First of all, she's a beautiful woman. She's obviously a good actress. I'm somewhat like, I always on my YouTube channel, I try to say that, look, Star Wars canon, legends, it doesn't really matter. It's all Star Wars. Pick and choose what you like. Don't bicker or fight over it. I'm not the biggest fan of the newest comic books. I enjoy mostly new novels. I think they're doing a heck of a job. But comic books, I'm not entirely sold on. And Afra is one of these characters that I'm not fully sold on, because her shtick is she always pops off as somebody who's smarter than Vader. She basically makes Vader always inconsequential in a way. And I don't like that. Yeah, but the way that she is here, it's what I really enjoyed what you did with her, Matt. She outsmarts the gang. She doesn't outpower. She doesn't outman everyone else. Like, what you guys can do, I can do, and I'm strong. I'm strong. There's no these modern messaging here. She's clever. She's smart. She explores her feminism. She explores her sexuality. She knows what these guys don't. And the way that you play her against other characters is just so effective and so mature. And, it's easy. It's not distracting. I'm looking at it. And whether I like Afra in comic books or not, I'm sold on this version. I'm sold on this character. It just works. Because I knew right from the beginning, as a huge Star Wars fan, that, oh, man, she's going to betray them at some point. But
she knows what they do not know.
Exactly. But how she comes at it, how it resolves, I was surprised.
She knows Bossk's out there. So when she asked for a blaster, she was like, okay, that didn't work. Now I'm a hostage. Well, Bossk's still out there, so that's my other out, right?
And a fun Easter egg, if you watch it again on the second watch, if you actually watch her every scene, I've told her every scene we're in the woods, she's looking in the trees for him. She's trying to find him.
She's trying
in the background. So if you watch her off camera, she's a little blurry, but she's actually actively just trying to see where he's at.
Yeah.
So she's signaling to the audience like, hey, something is out there. Our predator / Bossk, he's in there, but our cast doesn't know that.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Showed up with him and leaves with him.
Yeah. And what I really also enjoyed in terms of pacing of the film is that for, what is it, like about 10 minutes? About 15 minutes.
15,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
12 minutes of footage.
there is a very interesting progression and epicness to it, because you have two scenes here. That's what Star Wars is known for doing, right? It takes you across 2 or 3 locales or planets across each film. And that is the situation also here. So we have one major sequence. We have a little bit of plot there. All the characters interact. And now it's time to take it out and just have all the guns blazing. And we're going to this massive second action scene in the forest. Once again, my mind is blown. I'm like, oh, dude, when all the guys stood there in line and doing the whole shooting at the woods, I was literally laughing, man. I was ecstatic. I enjoyed it so much. I wanted to ask Matt from the director's point of view, because as I'm watching the piece, my sort of inner director is also paying attention how it was all done. And I see a lot of the stuff is practical. Things exploding, things are popping off the tree trunks. But also, obviously, stuff like laser blasts, they're digital. They're done in post. So for you as a director to solve this dilemma, how do you plan for this? And how do you figure out, all right, this I'm going to conceive. This is my film blueprint. I'm going to shoot and film my actors this way. I'm going to have the camera angles that way. And then I'm going to do the rest in the post. But it all comes out so seamless, man. It looks real. How do you do that?
Well, thank you. It's well, first and foremost, just the film world. Normally, you always have your protagonist on the left side of frame, antagonist on the right. That's just kind of a thing. So I always establish our guys on the left shooting in. But again, Predator, I'm taking massive inspiration from Predator. So I watched that scene many times. I was trying to match the length of the actual shootout. It's actually 45 seconds long of active shooting. I think we did it for about 30, 35. But the biggest way to go into that again, I'm thankful for my job in the industry because I knew this going in, what I needed.
Yeah.
And we actually broke that up into 2 days. The first day of shooting was strictly cast. And we only shot like 4 elements of that entire shootout. A lot of it was, angles of them shooting, da 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 da. And again, they're just, if you watch the raw footage, it's them quite literally with like a blaster, and they're just going like this.
Right.
And I was using this as a cue. So every time the blaster went up, but I had a long chat. We had long discussions on how to shoot the gun. So it's always you're coming back on an angle,
like the
or
recoil,
or you're coming back, slight recoil. Like Drath, he has that little submachine gun. He was doing 3-round bursts. So he was going like boom, 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 boom. But I told him, like, you have to be very specific with how you do that so I can see it in post. So we were doing a lot of that. And then when it got down to our big wide shot, we actually had mortars that we set up in the ground with our special effects team. And we had a couple explosions go off. We finished shooting that day. Then we go back with an additional unit. This was only 6 people. It was myself, my DP, two camera operators with cameras on very long lenses. And then I had 2 SWAT trained officers that worked for the police department locally. They're friends of ours. They came with 2 AR-15s, a shotgun, and I think that was it. But what we proceeded to do then, and the reason that I mentioned SWAT is because these guys were insanely precise with where I needed them to shoot with their AR. And we were on, again, don't do this at home, guys. Make sure you have like proper permitting. You're on private land. Like we got rental agreements from the people that live there. But fortunately, the place where we chose to do the shootout scene was an old firing range. I kid you not. So there was a gully, like a big like gulch that you had to walk down and over to get to the other side. So I made sure all of our crew were on this side. We set up the shooters and we set up our cameras. I had a laser pointer and I'd laser point the tree. I'm like, we're going to shoot at that tree right there. And then both these guys, we lock and load, 5 rounds each, action, boom, 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 boom. And they would just chunk up some trees. Once we get that, we move on. And then the last shot was a shotgun. Someone took a shotgun. Actually, it was me. For the very last shot, and I shot a branch, and the branch crashed and fell. And that's the very last shot of the sequence. But in order to accomplish all that, I wrote down every single little piece that I needed for that scene in order to make it look as good as it did. The reason we used practical rounds to shoot trees is it's a visual reference. I already have that in post. I don't need anything else.
And it looks real. It reads better on screen.
It reads beautifully because we added, fire, and we added the laser. We added some smoke in the frame to make it look distracting. But I'm super, super happy with how it turned out.
It looks great because, my animation professors always taught me that always treat audience with respect. Even if somebody has no clue what CGI or blue screen is, their eye naturally picks up what's fake because our eye is trained to look only at realistic stuff, and yours adds a bit of realism because it was all done practically. And once again,
I'm very adamant on practical effects starting your visual effects, like no matter what. I'm not a director that just has like something imaginative, and then there it is. Like I need something like Bossk. The only digital element of him were his eyes blinking.
Yeah, eyes. So. I sort of figured like Ewoks special editions, Bossk, blinking eyes. All right, I connected the dots right away. But yeah, no, it's awesome because once you start off with your strong foundation. I'm pretty sure you both guys are aware that most of the Pixar's animators, right, they basically make digital CGI films. They're all traditionally trained. They all know how to draw, figure drawing, pencils and pen before they even put them down behind the Mac stations and start animating digitally because that foundation always shows through. Yeah. Matt, once again, as I mentioned before, you were my favorite character in the film. Any prior acting experience? Like you just commanded the screen so well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been like playing around YouTube and stuff for 10 years or so plus. Yeah, so it's some local acting gigs and stuff. But the big thing was the Mario Warfare and Beat Down Boogie, and worked with other like Infectious Designer, worked with them.
He's very comfortable in front of the camera. He knows how to work it. That's for sure. So
That definitely showed. The beard helped a lot too, like to give that grit, film. What's that Michael Bay, one of his last film, 13 Hours, what it was?
Yeah,
right?
I know what you're talking about.
You look at these guys who are like special marines, and they're convincing. These are the guys whose career is to execute these dangerous missions. You got to have the proper look. You're not going to be like, Josh Brolin in The Predators. He was sort of convincing. He bulked up. But with yours, like, it was everything. It was also the look, but also the way you projected yourself on screen.
Yeah, and then lowering my voice to this level.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely helped. Roman, when you put on the Bossk suit, right, and you're there on the shooting day, did you have to, like, practice how to maneuver a little bit? Did you have, like, any eye sockets to look through? Was it easy for you to situate yourself in the scene?
Not at all. It's terrible. I will say the one good thing is I'm very used to creature costumes. Like, that's something I've been doing for years. I'm a cosplayer. I've been a cosplayer since 2012, but I always choose creatures. That's one thing I enjoy. So one good thing that I'm proud, like, I'm happy is I know my body, so I know how I'm moving without seeing it, which helps a lot. But in terms of, like, seeing the camera, no, I couldn't see a thing. When I put this thing on, all I see through are these little eye slots, and they're right in front of my eyes. So it's very tunnel vision. And the first iteration of this, before I cut a hole here so it could breathe, I was just fogged out. I was like drunk vision. Mm-hmm. We were also shooting in Georgia heat. It was 90 degrees that day. I had something called a cool shirt on. So what that does is I have a tube that hangs out of my suit. And the two costumers that helped me, Chris and Miracle Burns, shout out to them. They're amazing. They also got me into cosplay. They hook the tube to my back. They turn on the water, and it's cold water, and it circulates all around your chest. It helps immensely when you're in stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But no, I will say the day definitely slows down because obviously the director is now in a suit and he's acting. So we needed, the crew. I had Justin Reich, our editor, take over to direct it, and he did a phenomenal job. It just took many takes to get that perfect, because that whole shot, I don't know if you noticed, but that whole reveal shot of Bossk walking up, it's all on Steadicam. It's a oneer. Bossk is only in, I think, 4 shots in the entire film, so we definitely wanted it to be precise and look good. But was it hard? Absolutely. That's why in the second one, in the sequel, Bossk is in it again, but he's doing a more mild kind of thing where he's sitting and talking for a good chunk.
Guys, I know what I'm doing this afternoon for sure. I know what I'm doing after this interview. I'm watching part 2. It's honestly, I couldn't get around it, but like maybe, just maybe, I impressed these gentlemen enough. Like, could you please come over? We'll do a second podcast. Like, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah,
man, this is awesome.
There's a special treat in the second one as well. There's a particular character that we don't really talk about that will show up. So.
Oh man, all right.
And we're pretty proud to say that I think we nailed it. So.
Oh yeah.
I'll say that as a director. I'll say that. But anyways, yeah, Bossk himself, very fun. Again, my jaw dropped when I saw the dailies when it was done, and like before we even put the visual effects on him, I'm like, this alone is fantastic. This is gonna be great.
When you have something special, and Predator with Star Wars is pretty special.
Yeah.
Well, guys, to start wrapping it up a little bit, first of all, thank you so much for your time. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. You're like super talented. A couple of questions, if you don't mind, about Star Wars in general. I wanted to get just your general idea. There's so much vitriol on Twitter, on YouTube. Like, for some reason, you either have to like passionately love or hate something. It's never in between. Like, it's always the mature conversation with like, hey, I think I enjoy this. This could have been done better. Since 2012, since acquisition of Star Wars by Disney, how do you guys feel about like the general state? Like, what are your personal favorites? What do you think Star Wars is strongest at? Like, it's feature films, the sequel trilogy, whether it's the live action television shows or maybe animated shows. We got 2 shows, Rebels, The Bad Batch. We even got Visions. What are your thoughts there?
I'll go quick because I know Matthew's going to go for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going.
All right, you want to go first?
I liked Visions. Just taking, it's almost like what we did, with a fan film and created some art from 2 franchises, right?
Like a what if, yeah.
And they did that with fantastic artists and storytellers. I'm looking forward to Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
I lost faith after Book of Boba. That is fundamentally not. They're in a hard spot because I call him Diz Jaren, Disney Fett.
Yeah, yeah.
Din Jaren. You know, they gave him Boba's personality, and so now they're trying to remake Boba, and it's just
You can't have two Bobas.
and they're so confusing because season 2 Mandalorian, Boba shows up and he's a barbarian, which is what Rodriguez wanted to do, like a King Conan type Boba. And Book of Boba Fett comes out, and it's like they're confused. He can't pull the trigger. He can't like.
He's a politically correct mercenary.
Oh, he can't. I mean, I've said this before, and Disney forgets that you can set for stunt. Like you don't, and you don't have to kill people. Like, yeah, I can go all day on that. I was very disappointed in that show. And if you watch part 2, you will you will see what collectively the old school fans have kept Boba alive for 40 plus years. And that's kind of what we put in Notice Integrations. I will say I was disrespected by Disney for not letting Boba push the button to kill the Sarlacc after the fans kept him alive for 40 plus years.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I'm gonna get back off of that. But I really liked Mandalorian, season 1 and 2. Let's see what happens. Bad Batch, I really like. I have some theories about Omega, future Boba. I have some theories there. But looking forward to that. And Ahsoka. Andor, I need to check out. So I'm gonna check that out. It's out today. Right?
I think you might be surprised.
Yeah, I think you'll like it.
I have a theory you might be surprised by that.
Yeah.
Especially as a writer.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
I
what I
love
was getting at.
like espionage, you know, all that stuff. So yes, I'm hopeful. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I can't control it. I don't own it. I can't control it. All I can do is either sit back and like it, or agree to disagree,
or move on. Right?
I come from the days where people could agree to disagree. Like I don't care for your opinion.
Yeah,
like, you're welcome to it. It's like I watched Book of Boba one time, and it has no replay value to me. Yeah, sad. And it really ticks me off. Like it
is what it is. Yeah,
because you wait this long for something, you know, and it's like
I feel like Disney is in its like deconstruction, you know, reformative kind of like moment where they're trying to figure out how to push forward without looking over their shoulders how George would have done it. It's always hard to please the most passionate fans in the world. You know, I give them definitely props and credit where they try and go outside of the boundaries of status quo, what fans expect. Hey, if it's misfires and misfires, I personally understand the nature of filmmaking. Sometimes it just genuinely doesn't work. I think they're all out to, their motivations are to please fans. It just doesn't work sometimes. Or they take it into a new direction.
Also global fans. So
it's a global phenomenon. You're right.
Yeah, they kill a lot for certain sectors too. They like change stories around, or you know, it's a business rather than a craft of
Well, jumping on that, I would say the biggest downfall is quantity over quality is happening very much. They're just trying to churn stuff out because they think that's what everyone wants. And unfortunately, the days of, you know, a season coming out every 3 years are gone. It's now, it has to come out next year, and you have to keep going and churning it and churning it. Doesn't matter. We're not going to take time to sit down and write it correctly. You know, you guys have this deadline and you have to hit that deadline. The other unfortunate thing that I'm seeing a lot of is, no offense to these writers, because I know writers and I know how they get hired, and I understand it's a very hard thing to do. But a lot of these folks that are writing this material do not know the material inside and out, like most of these fans that watch the show do. I'm one of those fans. I will say I'm an example of that, because, for example, like one thing that I really enjoyed that came out since 2012 is Rogue One. That is obviously, that's one of my favorite feature films of Star Wars. It was executed beautifully. They brought the modern vision into the film. You know, modern filmmaking is seen in it. There's handheld. You never had handheld in the old Star Wars. It didn't exist. You know, if you had handheld at all, it was in the prequel trilogy or where it's, you know, digitally added. So that's one thing that I enjoy. The animated shows, unfortunately, I could never truly get into them. I think it's mainly just the illustration doesn't appeal to me. I do, however, I have read all the, you know, the notes just so I can keep up with, you know, what's happening. But in terms of like the shows themselves, I feel like the shows are just rushed, and it makes me sad. Except for their flagship, which is Mandalorian. You know, they're not going to rush that because that is the bread and butter. You know, it's Grogu, it's a new Din Djarin, a shiny new Mandalorian, literally. And they know that that is an attractive thing for fans to watch of all ages. Yeah. You know, Kenobi, I will say Kenobi made me sad at moments where I was like, you had it. It was there, but you missed it. You know, it like, and I think they know that, you know, when they're watching it too.
Yeah. I mean,
you have to, like, as a creator, you have to see that and be like, well, we missed the mark, but we had to get it out. There it is. I know that happened a lot with Book of Boba Fett. You know, a lot of folks were saying, you know, like this was ridiculous, but I'm not sure how true this stuff is, but I heard that there was a lot of real like editing at the end. They were rushing, and I could even see it in the edit when I watched the final fight. There were like, I recognized blaster effects that they were using. They weren't even properly like, you know, blended in.
Yeah,
you know, and you could see it. It felt rushed. And
I hear they shoot multiple takes of different things, so
they can change it in post if they need to. Yeah.
If one gets leaked, they can go to another one, and then it just doesn't.
Volume seems to have made them too complacent, and I'm so happy that Andor is moving away from it. I understand to pipelining your entertainment and knowing how to do it effectively because George was talking about it nearly 20 years ago. He would say, I'm not willing to produce a show $1 million per episode. We got to find more effective ways of doing it. And this is why, maybe because I am an animator, but also as yourself, huge Star Wars fan. I've invested over 25 years reading the EU. I always found that Star Wars is at its best when it doesn't cater, when it doesn't stick to just Skywalker saga or to familiar trope, familiar characters, when it goes outside the boundaries. And this is why Visions worked so well. It's non-canonical. It doesn't need to adhere to anything. It's playful. It has its own set of energy to it that these shows don't have. There's so much expectation and so many eyeballs on it, it's bound to disappoint people. But I'm also fascinated how differently we all interpret it, even at different age groups. Like, I would expect that Mandalorian would blow me away. I absolutely loved the trailer, and just didn't work for me that well. Like, it's a decent show, but it didn't wow me. But then I saw something like The Last Jedi, and I felt like a 6-year-old kid. And my friends asked me, Benjamin, what are you talking about? This is such a betrayal of Luke's character, you know? And then he comes in strong in the second season of Mandalorian. I said, well, hold on a second. I don't enjoy my favorite cinematic hero used as a film prop for the last 5 seconds of your film just to crowd please. I would rather take a much different take on Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, a more relatable person to me personally. But I perfectly understand if, let's say, Roman would disagree with me. I get it, man. Like, it's we have different worldviews, we have different perspectives. For some reason, for me, a kid who was watching Star Wars in mid-'80s, this version of Luke Skywalker worked. For some people, it doesn't. It's also us, right? We come in with so much baggage. Sometimes it's just it can never please us.
Well, to also, like, similar to that, the thing I noticed too is that they are taking every single show they make is trying to hit this audience. Right. It's like this big. And the thing is, if they're going to start doing volume, all this quantity of stuff, then you need to pick your battles. Like, have your animated show for your young kids. Have your Andor, for example, have Andor for the, you know, the Star Wars generation, the 40-year-olds, like that world. And then, like, just make it strictly for these groups. You're still going to get the views. It's going to happen. And I think that's what they're so terrified of, is like, we got to keep getting all the views from every single person. So a 6-year-old and a 66-year-old can both watch this show and they'll understand all of it. And that's where you're going to lose the 66-year-olds even you're 5 seconds in. Like, you know, another, I hate to keep bringing up bad examples, but Book of Boba Fett with the whole little kitchen thing, I was like, what is happening? Is this Blue's Clues? Like, what is going on? And
the
that's
Disneyfying of Star Wars, the packaging, nice little product, and let's push it out the gates. This is why I felt Star Wars Rebels, when they hit off in 2014, to this day, has probably one of the best planned, written, and executed hero's journey I've ever seen in Star Wars.
Beautiful arc.
It's a beautiful arc, and it has, once again, has so much energy because the niche is here. This is for younger generation.
Yes.
Take it or leave it. And look, adults like me talking about it with like goosebumps on my skin.
Yeah,
but it's their Luke Skywalker for the kids to have. But us as older generation, when we're watching, we're like, I can get behind that. Like, that's an actual full story arc that I believe, where then you get these other types of story arcs,
right?
Where, like, you know, the Mos Eisley lady, I don't even know her name. Matt knows who I'm talking about. I can't stand that character. I'm not kidding, Ben. I have to like leave the room when she comes on the screen sometimes. I'm like, I'll be back when she's off the camera.
But going back to the Rebels, though, I think that's the age when Rebels came out,
they were targeting.
Now they're adults, and I think Ahsoka is like the live action continuation of that story, right? Because Ezra and Sabine and all them are in there. So
when Filoni is in the sitting chair, my trust is absolute. I'm like, just do your thing. I'll wait for it.
That's what bugs me about the Book of Boba, because it says written by John Favreau, and I'm like, there's no way. There is no way, because you cannot logically tell me Boba went to the Sarlacc pit and thought he left his armor inside and crawled out, and John Favreau wrote this trash. There's no way.
Yeah.
And especially when you show the Jawas knocking him out, like, you just told the audience that he knows the Jawas took it. He's not going to fly back and be like, yeah, I left my armor in there. I got to go get it.
Well, not only that, but flying, you know, in it.
Yeah, and like, just give it to him. He just murdered a bunch of bikers that were just bad people, like, you know. Just give him the Sarlacc, and you couldn't even let Fennec accidentally hit a button to accidentally let it. Oh god, spoilers. Sorry.
But at the end of the day, I just, I once again recognize that it's a tough gig. What you guys are doing, even on the level of a film, once again, thank you for such a beautiful film. It works so well. I know you put your hearts and souls into it. And I just recognize sometimes when even the directors that I love fail, I'm not going to just kick them ones that have crawling on the floor. It's like, you did it terrible. Sometimes it is what it is. And I think it's more prudent to move forward or focus in the meantime on something that works better for you and just wait for the next moment. I do believe, as an optimist, the greater things are ahead of us in terms of Star Wars. It will happen. It's just we need time.
Yeah, I'd say until then, we wanted to see our favorite bounty hunters kick butt, and that was the whole concept.
And it's almost like we stayed true to the characters. We didn't want to tell her. We'd stay true to Predator and Bossk, right? Like, I had a buddy of mine was like, "Why did you kill Rail? Like, you could have came back as something else." I was like, "Because Bossk would."
I wanted to make this.
That is so true.
There's not. I have to.
It's not like Bossk is like, yeah, you're good. I'll see you later.
Yeah, I have to stay true to the story, true to the characters.
Yes,
and that's what we wrote. And likewise for No Disintegrations, we wrote this before Book of Boba came out, and we were like,
we were nervous.
Yeah, we might get they might tell the story of No Disintegrations in Book of Boba, like have a flashback or so, because they were talking about flashbacks, and we were like, well, I don't know. I mean, that might kick some ass in here.
We gambled.
we did, but we were wanting to tell our version of No Disintegration. So,
but like as a final note, with the reason that we make these fan films in particular is the majority of the fan films you see online nowadays are mainly lightsaber based, and we've always wanted to try, that was our biggest challenge on ourselves, was make something interesting without lightsabers.
No lightsabers.
And we were like bounty hunters. Nobody's ever really done it. Bossk is also really hard to pull off, and I'm so thankful for Bill and his team for making such a cool looking Bossk. I'm biased. I think he looks cooler than Empire Strikes Back personally.
He looks
But,
amazing. I'm telling you, I was blown away. I was like, oh man. And it's sweet because the less you see of him, the better he works.
Yes, and that was the whole goal there. We actually had a shot where he was running. You just see his feet in the slow motion, similar to Predator when Anna sees him running away. We actually had that shot, but I didn't want it. It was too revealing. So.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for your time. Closing comments here, Roman and Matthew. Roman, what is your advice to beginner fan film director? And Matt, what is your advice for a beginner fan film writer?
Well, directing, I would say, do it. Firstly, like you're going to talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, but until you either A, do it yourself, or B, find the right people to do it with, like Matthew, it won't happen. And when you do it, definitely be prepared for things to go wrong. And when they go wrong, make sure you already have an answer in your back pocket ready to go. And that's the hardest thing with filmmaking, is you always have to have an answer ready. And then just a quick side comment is, this is just from my experience, special effects carry a lot. Make sure smoke machines, blaster burns, like things like that, real types of effects, they will help make your film look way more valuable than it is. So ups the production value.
Practical light with the mine going off, instead of adding light to
that red light was an actual blinking light. So.
Yeah, the devil is in the details for sure.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. But don't let the idea stop you.
Yes.
Push on. That's what I say.
Same for writing. You have to put this down, put it on silence, put it here, and dedicate. I say 15 minutes a day to, or your schedule. Make it in your schedule somehow. Almost like working out, training your body, you're training your mind to just actively meditate, right? And that's how you get in the story. And just take 15 minutes, sit there, put on music, do whatever it takes to disconnect from everybody else.
Yeah.
Get in your own head and relax. So whatever that takes, and then get in that world, get in that character, and then start writing. You can always change it, but as long as it's on the paper, it's on the paper, right?
You did it.
Yeah, the only one, because I put a lot of crap on paper. Roman's like, what is this crap? And it's like, okay, well, let's change this and that, and then Scorekeeper is born, or Notice Integration. So
yeah. And if I might add to it, I would say that, guys, if you're a beginner and you're aspiring to something what Roman and Matthew have done, maybe you're not on that level, but it is okay, because so long that you try and you put your heart into it and you do it, you'll obviously have your share of naysayers, especially now with social media. But I believe that you will have within Star Wars community fans who will appreciate what you're doing, and it'll encourage you, and it'll say, keep doing it, keep pushing.
Yeah. And I'll even go a step further and say, you can email us, creativeforcefilms@gmail.com. You can email that, ask any question you want. We've already had a few people asking how we did it. As long as I have time in the day, I'll respond. So
that's awesome, guys. It's so like, you're so generous with your time, and I really appreciate like how you talk about so passionately about this. I'll definitely take all of your important links. I'll put them in the video description. I'll drop this on my Facebook group, so I hope many people get to see it. Once again, guys, thank you so much for your time. Star Wars Timeline fans, once again, these have been the creators behind Bossk, one of the coolest Star Wars fan films. Go out and check it out. I'll definitely drop the link to this again. I hope we get to this again, guys. I had a blast talking to you. You're really awesome. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.